All right, we just started the recording. So good afternoon, everyone. It's after 12, so we can say afternoon now. Thank you all for coming to the Hooksett Chamber of Commerce's Lunch and Learn presentation provided by Armand Hebert of Hebert Consulting. Here at the Chamber, we strive to connect, collaborate, and help our members thrive with both in-person networking, online marketing, and educational events to help our members learn and grow. So here's the second presentation that we've had so far this year in 2022. And our featured presenter today is Armand Hebert. A little bit about him. He's a new hire, team development consultant and trainer, and he works with companies and business professionals who would like to hire the best team members and develop leadership that will outperform their present productivity. If you can answer yes to one or more of the following statements, you should talk to him. I need to start hiring the right people. We are a successful business, but how do I bring it to the next level? I'd like to be more successful in my career or business. I need help with presentation skills. How will my business or career look in 1, 3, or 5 years? And I need to set goals for business and have everyone in my organization help accomplish that. Some of the services that he provides: executive assessments for management, sales, customer service within your company, new hire consulting assessments and benchmarking, business coaching and consulting, leadership training and development, team building assessments, and he's also a speaker. That's why we got him on here today. So Armand, I will let you take it away.
All right. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Just give you a little background on myself. I started working with DISC probably over 20 years ago. And at that time, we only had DISC. And then about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman who had put together a DISC assessment, a Hartman values, and a Harvard motivators assessment all in one, which was really unique because I was doing a lot of new hire consulting with just DISC, and I was missing the other two assessments to really put together an idea of whether or not that person was going to work well in that company. But we're going to we'll address that. We'll talk about those a little bit more at the end of the presentation. But right now, what I really want to do today is help you identify your personal DISC behavior style, understand your behavior style, learn how to identify other behavior styles, and learn how to interact with these different behavior styles. If you look at DISC, it's statistically proven that anyone who is self-aware of themselves in an assessment is 10% more productive their whole life. Now you imagine that. If you have a company 10 and you go through and you make the investment, get everybody an assessment, get them a debrief, for a company of 10 is going to run you probably a couple $1,000. You just added one person to the productivity of that company without reoccurring costs, meaning, obviously training, having to salary, everything that goes with an employee. So if you look at that, you can be more productive, create a culture that everyone wants to be part of. One thing that I've noticed is when we start looking at companies and we start implementing this philosophy or culture, then people enjoy coming to work more. They understand each other better. They're a little more forgiving on how people talk to them. They understand how to communicate better with our clients, how to be out in public better. Even the relationships at home become better because they understand why maybe their wife or their husband or their significant other are pushing their buttons. And they can sit there and they can say that, wow, okay, they're not just trying to upset me, they just don't know any better. So by doing all of that stuff, we increase productivity, we can reduce employee turnover, lessen internal team issues. And when we go to end up coaching and mentoring people, we can do it in a nicer way, because if it's in an assessment, then it isn't considered a personal attack on that person. So if I walk in and I'm doing individual coaching with someone and I say, well, we need to do this and this, and they start pushing back. So well, wait a minute, now look on page whatever, it states it right here that you have an issue of overstepping your bounds that you just did. So how can we make sure that we don't do that more often here? Are we going to eliminate it 100%? Absolutely not. And we're all human, we all make mistakes, but it makes everybody be a little bit more forgiving. Okay, so I had, I believe everybody was forwarded their DISC worksheet, which was 4 squares with a bunch of different words. It kind of looked like this. If you've already had a DISC assessment, that's fine. If not, you can go through and you can do this later on, because we're kind of limited on time, and we were in a regular classroom setting. We would have spent probably an hour and a half on this rather than just an hour. But go back after, and I'm going to tell you where to write in your DISC styles in the corners, as I think it's on my next slide. Yes, it is. Okay, so if you have more check marks or marks in the upper right-hand corner, you will be considered a D. If you are over in the left-hand corner, you would be considered a high I, a higher I. In the bottom left-hand corner would be a higher C, and in the bottom right-hand corner would be higher S. So when we look at that, it kind of puts you in an idea as we go through the next few slides on how to identify yourself and how to interact better with the other styles. Please remember that if we're looking at corner to corner, meaning I to C, those are opposite behavior styles. So those two behavior styles often are in conflict. The D's and the S's, they are opposing behavior styles. So again, they are often in conflict. So when we're putting together teams, we want to make sure that we have a good mix of all behavior styles. Because when we don't, as you can see as we go through the next few slides, we can develop some real issues there. So below that center line, those are slower paced people, meaning that they take their time in their decision making. They're not going to make a decision right away. They really need time to adjust to sudden change. They do well in front of crowds. They don't like surprises. So when we're looking at that, we need to remember that. Now, to be above that line, our fast-paced people, our D's and our I's, they are very much, let's get moving. We're not moving quick enough. We're going to make decisions on the spot, which sometimes come back to haunt us, because I am extremely high D, and I've learned in the past that I don't make decisions on the spot anymore, because they typically don't work well for me in the end, because I'll sit there and go, why did I make that decision? I should have put a little more thought into it. So I've learned from that and learned from my assessment to slow myself down. Now, my second one, because I am a DI, really contributes to the fact that I really like to make decisions and move quickly, which means that when I'm interacting with the C's and the S's of the world, I often can scare them or put them off because I need to slow down. And that's where, as a leader, when I come into a company or even out in the community, Chamber of Commerce or anywhere, I've learned that I need to identify that person's behavior style, adjust what I'm saying, how I'm saying it to that person to be able to serve them better. Because that is the whole idea of this process, is to serve our team members, our family members, our society in a better way by speaking to them the way they want to be spoken to. And if we can do that, that's very awesome. For example, when I lived in New Hampshire full time, I now live in Tennessee and go back to New Hampshire once a month. I was a bail commissioner, and I took that job for 2 levels: one, serving my community, and number 2 was to be able to practice my behavior styles at points of people in their lowest point of their life. And I was able to deliver bad messages to people based on their behavior style, have them thank me on the way out the door, and pay me for my services. So when we look at that, it's about how you deliver the message, not the message. And when we can become more aware of that, it becomes a lot easier in the world. Okay. So I'll let you finish those later, and we'll move on to our D's. Our D's, they're dominant, meaning they like to be in charge. They're direct. They're very point to the blank. Don't waste my time. and they are demanding. If you said you're going to have it to be yesterday, why wasn't it there? And yesterday probably wasn't soon enough. It should have been the day before. These are dominant, direct, demanding, as I was saying, very decisive. They make decisions quicker than they probably should at times. Very determined, doers, and we are very, very defiant. That is just us, no matter what is happening. Often we will, if we're in an argumentative stage, we will argue until somebody just gives up and gives us the win. Because we do like to win, okay? They like to plan for the future, like new ideas, which the S's and C's in the world really want status quo, and that really scares them. Most people do not like change. So D's can be very intimidating to a group. They like results, means that I need to see where my time is spent and what my return on investment is. They're very much driven that way. Otherwise, they feel like they're wasting their time. They like to be their own boss. So if you're bringing a D into your company and you're going to have a lot of controls on that person, as far as what they need to be, where they need to be and everything, that may not be the best position for them. They like to move fast and they like challenges. Easiest way to motivate a D is just look at them and say, well, I'm not sure if you can be able to do that. And 9 out of 10 times they will make sure that they accomplish that goal, if not even better. What we need to remember is that D's are only 10% of the society, which if you really look at that markup, if we had a whole bunch more D's running around in society, we probably wouldn't have a world left because we would have blown it up and been fighting and everything else. Okay. So when we look at that, you need to realize that. But also as a high D, you need to realize that you're only 10% of society, which means that you are probably upsetting 99% of the room, okay? Because even you're upsetting other Ds because you want to win in your competition to win. So you really need to get that under control. And when I did my first assessment ever was at and I looked at that and I'm going, ooh, man, I really made some mistakes in my life. And I kind of backtracked and said, all right, life could have been a lot easier had I realized this earlier. So if you are a high D, please remember that. Take this very seriously and look how you can better interact with other behavior styles, because it'll make you a lot more likable person, make you a lot more productive person, and make you a better leader, okay? If we're putting together teams, we definitely want, or in a company, we definitely want a D somewhere, because those are the people that move things forward. But when we're putting together things later on, you understand why we also need some S's and C's on that team to take the reins and slow them down a little bit to make sure we're not making those quick decisions, okay? Our eyes, they are inspiring people. Excuse me. They are inspiring people, meaning they like to be the center of attention. They have great stories. They're influencing. If you want an eye is great in someone in PR that can go out and promote something. Someone in your sales department, they can go out and talk things up, likes to be in front of people. They're impressionable. They're interactive, impressive, involved, ideological, meaning that they really have their ideological point of view and they really love to interact with people. They like to be the center of attention. And when they're not the center of attention, they're typically not too happy about it. They like to be liked. So they do have a hard time if they're in a management position holding people accountable, because that means they got to talk about some yucky stuff, and that's not what I'm good at. They like to express their ideas. They don't like to be shut down mid-sentence. They like to be in front of the group. They are typically the person, if you walk into a party or something, they've got 10 people around and everybody's laughing because they are the center of attention. They do like surprises. They like lots of fun activity, and they like recognition. And they like it recognition in a public way. So if you're at a meeting and you have a high I there, recognizing them in public is something that they will very much enjoy. If you're going to take them as a reward, take them to lunch, someplace fun, those are places that we do. If you have a sales call, bring them to someplace that's got a lot of action, coffee shop, that type of thing, where they have a lot going on around them. They are 25 to 30% of society. So kind of remember that as we go through. S's, they are supportive, steady people. They're stable, sweet, status quo, shy, and sometimes, hate to say it, they feel like they're suckers because they can't say no. And what happens is they can't say no, they can't say no, they can't say no, and then they get backed into the corner. And then when they become upset because they're mad at themselves for being taken advantage of, they will come out swinging. And that's typically, especially D's, because remember I said they were opposites. Sometimes they just keep taking advantage of that S, and then the D doesn't even realize they're doing it. And then all of a sudden the S comes out and the D will sit there and go, well, where did that come from? I've asked you to do this 25 times. And it was always yes, yes, yes. And all of a sudden now there's a problem. And when we do that, we have to remember as D's that we can't do that to them. And as S's, if you do have that problem of saying no, then I challenge you right now to once a day to say no to somebody. Okay. I say that a lot to people when I come into a company, if I see their high S's and they relate to this slide very, very much as the sucker feeling. And I sit there and go, okay, now you have to say no once a day. And I just get done a leadership program over in Henry County down here in Tennessee. And there was a lady that as soon as I said this, she almost had tears in her eyes because she finally felt like she had some recognition on why she felt this way all the time. And so I challenged her to say no once a day. And the next leadership meeting a month later, she had done that and she said it was liberating for her. So if you know somebody that has that issue, just give them some friendly advice and say, you really need to start saying no once a day. And that could be to a coworker, that could be to family, that could be to your kids, whatever. Just it'll get easier as you say it once in a while. And once you get comfortable with that, then you got to say it a couple times a day. Okay, till you're comfortable with, you feel that you're not being a doormat. Okay. So when we look at that, the reason why they hate to say no is because they like to be accepted. They like team and cooperation. They like sticking to what works. They don't like change. They like harmony. Why can't we just all get along? They like things to say the same, and they like peace. This is the biggest segment of our society, thankfully. These are the people that are our support staff. These are the people that make other people in the company and the team and everything look good. It's not always about themselves. So therefore, they're good people for customer service, people that can answer your phone, people that are going to interact with your clients and everything like that. So when we look at that, they're a very important part of a team. Our C's, they're cautious, calculating, competent, conscientious, contemplative, careful, and they can come across as cold because they're always analyzing everything. They are our engineers in the world. They are the people that when you put a comma where a period should be, they will let you know. And they're not doing it to show that they're more intelligent or anything like that. They're just, everything has to be correct in their world. But with that also comes some issues that we'll talk about a little bit later. So when we look at that, they like to be right. If you're talking to a high C and it's 14.3% increase in sales, don't tell them it's 14%, or round it up to 14.5, because they will correct you, because they need to know everything is right. They like to know what is expected of them. So if you are leading them, you need to give them details of what you're expecting and how and the steps, if they don't know the steps, and when you would like it done by. They need to have all the information. And once you give them all the information, expect them to come back with 10 more questions. It's not that they weren't listening, it's just that they need more information to be able to accomplish everything to be perfect. Okay. Like established patterns, meaning that if they get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, probably even on the day off, and they have a routine. So in the workplace, they like to have an established pattern as well. They like clear instructions, which I just kind of went over. They like to finish what they started. They are not the type of people that can have 3 projects going at once and be comfortable with it, because they need to go from start to finish, and then I can start my next project to make sure it's perfect. And they like to organize things. A key indicator on walking into an office, on if someone's AC, you can look at their desk. Their desk will have everything in its place, and their pencil will be in the same place. And if you really want to test it, pick up the pen and move it to another end of the desk and watch how quickly it gets put back to where it belongs. Okay. So if you're working with a high C, do not come in by any means and just drop stuff on their desk. If they have an inbox, make sure it's put on the inbox. Otherwise, you are going to upset them. Okay. And I see a couple people nodding their heads, and they're going, yes, that does upset me. And now myself, on the other hand, being the DI, if you looked at my desk, it was like a bomb blew up. So if you look at my wife, who is an SC, if she comes into my office, she becomes very agitated and looks at me and goes, how can you work like this? I said, this is a sign of intelligence here. Just leave me alone. But if you go up in her desk is, everything has its place, everything is filed away, everything is organized. I mean, she even has her music CDs lined up in alphabetical order. That's how much of a C she is, okay? So I never touch those, because I'll never put them back to where it needs to be, and I will have to listen to it for the rest of the evening. So that's how organized they are. So just kind of remember that when you're trying to work with those C's, and respect their boundaries, because otherwise, once you upset them, it takes them quite a while to get over it. They don't forget things easily.
On that desk analogy, really hit home how I know I'm not a C, because I as a DI myself, the bomb blow up is kind of what it looks like right now. I would show you, but I think, I don't
but we can find everything.
I know where it's at.
Right. My wife came in one time when I went on a business trip, and I came back and my desk was clean, and it took me a month to figure out where everything went. And I told her, if she ever did that again, that was to be grounds for divorce. Because I just could not handle that. That was not productive. She felt good about it, but it wasn't good for me.
It's organized chaos.
What's that?
Organized chaos is what I
Yes. Yes. Okay. Any questions on anything so far, folks? No? Okay, good. Because if you have one, please chime in. All right. So let's talk about, how do they look? Because I talk about identifying behavior styles. So when I first started working at DISC, my first exposure to DISC was a program called GEMS. And GEMS was based on DISC on GEMS. So you had rubies and pearls and different things. But the primary focus on it was to be able to identify a behavior style by walking into the room, by the way a person is dressed, what they have on for jewelry, their handshake and everything. So I will quickly go, well, not quickly, but we'll go through each behavior style's identifying factors. Handshakes we can't kind of do on the internet, but I will kind of hopefully give you an idea what it is, because we were in person, that I would bring somebody up and actually demonstrate those handshakes for you. Okay, so be a little forgiving on that area. Okay, so let's talk about, there we go. Let's talk about our Ds. They like to look good. Okay, if it's a high D, they typically will have the dark suit, white shirt, maybe a colored, but the power tie going. If they have a tie on, they will have, some are flashy, have, for men, you know, the suits, the power tie, the shoes that match the belt, meaning that if you have a black shoes on, you get a black belt, and vice versa, where you will see the difference in the men and the eye level. Women will be well put together. All the jewelry will match, which means that if you have gold on, you will have all gold. If you have silver on, it will be all silver. If it's platinum, it will be all platinum. They don't typically like to mix and match their jewelry. High heels, made up to look professional, to the best, you know, to look good. They will drive flashy, fast Mercedes type cars, top end USVs, SUVs rather. Red, black, white, and color. Those are the type of things that kind of go with it. Their handshakes when they walk up to you will be a firm handshake and typically a double pump, and deliver their first and last name. So that's one indicator of where you could be when you walk in and start looking at that. Okay. Any questions on that slide? No. Okay. Our eyes. Clothing is going to be a bright and bold colors, trendy fashion. Women, decent amount of makeup, rhinestone jewelry that will not match, because they get up in the morning and, well, what do I want to wear today? Whatever makes them feel good and happy walking out the door is what they're going to wear. Okay. Color, they typically will have a different colored hair, maybe the highlights, that type of thing. Men, more casual looking clothing, trendy, bright colored ties, if wearing one at all. Because I am an ID, or a DI rather, I typically will have a suit coat, a darker gray suit coat with black pants or whatever. Typically my pants and my suit coat don't match, so it's not typical D setup, but I will typically have a colored shirt or a colored tie on. So therefore I've kind of blended both of those together. So when people kind of look at that, they're happy-go-lucky people. Cars will be sporty cars or SUVs, bright colors, banana yellow. You know, the Volkswagen Bug yellow or something like that. It's gonna be something fun and what they like, just fun to drive. If they offer you a ride, you will probably have to clean the passenger seat off for you to get into the car, because much like their desk, their cars often resemble the same thing. So when you see a messy car, you have to attribute to some behavior style things. Okay. Handshakes will be a whole bunch of pumps, and they will greet you with, "Hi, how are you?" They don't even want to know your name. You're already their friend. Okay. Eyes are people that everybody's their friend. And you can expect a hug. They like to be hugged. So as a D, when I first started studying it, I used to go to networking events. I'd have some high eyes, and they'd come running across the room. "Oh, I'm going to give you a hug." And I wasn't quite there on the hug situation, but realized that it was just what they needed to make that relationship. It's like, okay, now I'm fine. Give me a hug. And that's it. But if you are a high I and you identify a high C, please don't go over and hug them. You will destroy them for the evening. Their shoulders will go up around their neck and they will stiffen up like a board because they are very uncomfortable because you invaded their space. Okay, so if you're trying to connect with a C, as much as you love to go out and give a hug, kind of refrain from that, respect that, okay? Okay, our S's. They will have clothes on that are earth tones, pastel colors, dockers, polo shirts, very casual dress. Unless they're going to a wedding or something like that where they may dress up a little bit more, but they will be more on the conservative side. They're not probably going to have the real latest fashion dress, the latest high heels. They're going to have more of a 2-inch square heel where they're going to be more comfortable. Women, not a lot of makeup, little to no jewelry. In fact, if they have jewelry on, it's probably something was given to them. If you're kind of on the fence on a high S and she's wearing a ring or whatever, you can say, oh, that's a nice ring. Where did you get that? If they say, oh, my daughter or my husband or whoever gave it to me, then you know you're on the right path because they typically will not go out and spend money on themselves because it's all about taking care of everybody else. So when you're dealing with high S's, you really need to remind them that they need to take care of themselves and need to go out and reward themselves sometimes because they don't. The cars would be safe and neutral colors, nothing too flashy. They're not going to have, they'll have the 4-cylinder instead of the 8-cylinder because they don't really need to go fast. And, you know, that's good enough to get me by and I don't want to spend the extra money. Handshakes, they will do a double clasp, meaning they will grab you one hand and then put their other hand over, much like this, and they will give you, and they will greet you with nice to meet you, and you will have to ask them for their name because it's not about them, it's about you, because everything in the world is about taking care of everybody else, okay? Now our C's. Please forgive me if there are C's on this call, but sometimes the clothing can be a little outdated because, you know what, I've got a suit that I graduated high school with, it still fits, and I only use my suit for weddings and funerals, so therefore, why do I need another one? If I have a hole in my jeans, I'll cut them off and make them into shorts because I want to make sure I get all of my money's worth out of my clothing. They don't like to shop. That's the second part. Please remember that some C's have significant others or partners or marriages that their partners are I's and they will go out and shop for them. So sometimes their clothing can throw you off because their wife or their husband dressed them. So that, just kind of remember that. Women, probably no makeup and definitely no heel. They will typically be in flats because that's more comfortable. C's will typically wear glasses because poking yourself in the eye, putting contacts in every day just doesn't make sense. And that, I don't have time for that, okay? Cars make sense, car, reliable, and they will ride them forever. Means that they will ride them until they are worth about $100 and then they'll go turn them in. Or they will trade them when they've done the research to know that if I drive it to 49,000 miles, 999 miles, I will get a better trade-in value than if I go to 60,000 miles, because that's where my sweet spot is. They will research everything to make sure they are getting all of their money out of their car. Handshakes, much like the D's, you can expect a strong one pump. Do not invade their space. After you shake their hand, take a step back out of their space. If you see a C at a networking event or a wedding or wherever you're at, they typically will have put themselves with their back against the walls so that nobody can sneak up behind them and surprise them. They only want to meet a few people, and they don't like to be dragged into a large crowd. Okay. So hopefully I painted a picture of some people you may know, or you can identify with personally, which is pretty powerful when we can start making that click. Now, the next slide is kind of representation, because people often ask me, well, you have to be a certain style to be a leader. And that is so untrue. You know, you look at your dominant styles, you know, your Ds, there's a list there, there's pictures of leaders throughout history in the world, and each style is represented. It's just a different way of leading, that's all, okay? And it's very important that people realize that. And I often have to go through that when I start with business owners or salespeople, because they look at, well, I know so-and-so that is a business owner, and he's a high D, so I have to be a high D. And when you're not accepting the fact that you are who you are, then you hold yourself back. For example, I had one of my first clients, he was a high C, but insisted that he was a high D because all the business owners that he was around were high Ds. So he would go into a sales call and give everybody all the information on everything on the sales call. He was wondering why his sales were down, because he was approaching it that way. Once I got him to realize after 3 sessions that he was a C, and turned around his sales process where he didn't have to give the Ds all the information. He didn't have to give the Is all the information, because the Is are bored halfway through the conversation. The D only wants to know who, when, and how. Then his sales doubled within like 2 weeks, because he didn't have to approach it that way. So you can see how adjusting that really makes a difference, okay? The other thing, if we're looking at dealing with clients, my wife and I, we had a storefront travel agency down in Merrimack when I first started discovering disc. And when people would come in, I would want to kind of steer them to a certain cruise product if that's what they wanted to do, based on their likes or whatever. And I realized that the C's, I had to give them all the information, all the brochures, put it in the bag so it didn't make a mess on their way home, staple a card of my cruise agent to one of the brochures, and tell them, when you have some questions, give Margaret a call. Once I started doing that, that was their buying process. We pretty much landed every C that walked through the door, because that was how they wanted to purchase things. So when you can see how important behavior styles is, that's how you can increase sales. That's how you increase customer service scores and everything else, okay? Okay, Ds. They dislike or struggle with people being late, slow drivers, lazy people, someone who can't make a decision. I struggle with instructions and details. The more details you get them, the more complicated it becomes, and they will lose interest very quickly. Slow drivers, too many choices, and unhappy people. Someone is unhappy all the time around an I, they will start avoiding them. C's, they get upset with people who are late, lack of detail, disorganization, anything that doesn't make sense. They just don't understand how someone could do it that way. That doesn't make sense. F, conflict, pushy people, rude people, and being overwhelmed. How to motivate each style. D's, being the best, winning, and challenging them. Like I said before, I don't think you can do that, or I think that goal is too high. Or if they give you a goal and you think it's too low, go, wow, that's all you think you could do? And they will immediately, well, what do you mean? Well, I think you could do 1 million. Oh, well, yeah, I could do that, because they always want to win and look good, okay? I's, take them to lunch, anything fun, lots of people around them, and not being left out. So if you're having somebody's birthday party, make sure your eyes are invited, because if they aren't, they're going to feel like they were slighted. C's, they need value, predictability, make sense and understanding on the whys of things, meaning that if you can approach a bunch of C's and say, here we are now, and here we are here are the steps we need to do to get there, and map it all out for them, they will accomplish that goal. But if you just don't give them the steps, they are going to struggle with that because you haven't given them all the information. Okay. S is helping others, being sincere people, and staying out of conflict. That's what motivates them. Okay. Things that each style is not good at, because each style has some things that we're not good at. Backing down from an argument for these, we're not humble and very critical of ourselves, meaning that when we do have failure, we make a mistake, we will beat ourselves up for days, because that's how we make sure that we don't do it again. I's, they're not organized, they're distracted easily. I call them shiny object syndrome, because if I roll a marble across the floor, their eyes going to be looking at the marble. It's about what's fun, okay? And being on time. They struggle with that. C's, they prefer to be alone, complete one thing at a time, networking, personal interaction, and expressing feelings. S's, they're not very good at saying no, as we discussed before, handling tensions, being in front of a large crowd. So they really want to just kind of hang in the wings. I would never, ever at a seminar bring an S up on stage to perform that handshake demonstration without asking them first, because they will not like me at the end of the seminar. And therefore, I've created an enemy. So I always make sure I pick out an S and a C and ask them permission to make sure that the I's are easy. I need a handshake person. They're all me. And the D's, well, yeah, I'm going to do that because they want to show how great they are. Okay. Now on the next slide, communication with each style. D's get to the point. Can you handle this? They will make decisions now. Do what you say you will do. Set a time of expectation and make sure they are met. Meaning that all I need to know is when you can deliver, what you're going to deliver, how much it's going to cost me. That's all I need to know. And what problem are you going to solve? What pain are you going to solve for me? You can deliver those 4, you probably got my sale. But I don't need to know how the air purification unit takes the little particles and puts them together and makes them drop on the floor. I don't care. All I want to know is that there's going to be clean air. Okay. I's, fun words, friendly words, open with, how was your weekend? Always look at an eye and I say, well, hey, what'd you do last night? What'd you have for supper last night? Those are things that let them have a little bit of personal, and then we can get down to business. Expect not to get down to business right away. Give them a little time to warm up, okay? C's, use facts, research, get to the bottom line quickly. Make sure your facts are correct, or they will correct you. That's all they want, okay? S's, use language. How do you feel about this? Are you comfortable with this? Could you share with us your thoughts? Because if you don't ask them their thoughts, they're not going to share them. So when you're working with a team of S's, you really need to keep asking, how do you feel about that question, to get them to open up to that and get some good feedback. I know when you do talk to them about things, good thing that you always do is, I know you're going to need some time to think this over. When can I follow up with you? Okay. When I was more active in my wife's travel agency, I would come in and say, hey, we got to need to do this, this, and this, and we got to do it today. And she would push back. Once I discovered how to better present that idea, I would come in and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this and this. Why don't you think it over? When you're ready, get back to me. And when I did that, I would be sitting at my desk probably for about 5 minutes, and she'd walk back and say, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Because I gave her time to analyze it, think about it, and make her own decision. So S has really enjoyed that. Okay. Okay, so the next part, I'll kind of go through a little bit quicker because we only have about 10 minutes left here. I want to talk about using new hire assessments, because now that we look at how important DISC is and everything, one thing is we always talk about is employee retention, and everybody is struggling with hiring new people. Whether you are, I have clients from New Hampshire to Washington State and beyond, and everybody in the world is struggling with hiring people for whatever reason. We can spend 3 hours debating this one, but anyways, it is the cards that we are dealt as owners and business people, and we need to learn how to motivate, how to move around that and make the best of the situation. Okay, so by using assessments, we can know the type of person that we're bringing onto the team before we even consider making them an offer. Okay, so what do? Reduce cost of turnover for bad hires. Cost of a bad hire of a company is between $7,000 and $100,000 per bad hire. Greg Smith, the gentleman who put the executive assessment together, he who lives in Hawaii, he does all the hiring for a large hospital chain on the West Coast. And his biggest bad hire, because someone didn't listen to him, was a general surgeon for a large hospital. And they wanted to hire him because of his name. And he told them after the assessment that that was going to be a mistake. And in the end, that was a $500,000 mistake. So that's how much bad hires can get, depending on what level they're at. In the assessments, it has a do's and don'ts communication page. Well, I'll show you a quick sample as we go through, which tells you, do talk to me this way, don't talk to me that way. When I come into a company, whatever assessment, whether it be a full executive assessment or just this is the page that everyone has to share with each other. It is extremely important to understand how to communicate with each other. And when we start doing that, matter of fact, most companies that I have, they actually start hanging them on their door. So that when somebody walks into somebody else's office, it reminds them that they need to speak to them this way or that way. I have owners who have a clipboard with everybody's do's and don'ts. So when they have to address something that's a little touchy, or somebody messes up, they can go back and remind themselves how to communicate properly to them. Understanding a candidate's challenges before you hire them. I will show you one of the pages from the executive assessment that actually gives you where their challenges are, and we rate them from A to D, much like we would in school. C being the majority of society, D being that area that they really struggle in, and obviously B's and A's are a little bit above average. Okay. And within that, we also have the ability to run a collaboration report, which I'll give you a sample page where we run I think it's like 15 pages of 2 team members working side by side and how to better work together, which is pretty powerful. Matter of fact, when we start doing new hires, and if we have the whole company on board, we will typically run a collaboration report between the team members, make sure they're going to be a good fit. Okay, so this is the communication plans, and this is the do's and don'ts. So basically what we are able to do is look at, okay, do talk to me this way. I don't like when people talk down to me or make decisions for me, whatever they are. Everybody has a different set. Everybody has things that pushes their buttons when they're spoken to incorrectly. And the other thing that's really nice about this too is when I first looked at this, I realized when people said things to me certain ways, that's what pushed my buttons. And I was a little more forgiving with it. And then those people who I interacted with on a daily basis, I would sit there and say, okay, I need to retrain them on how to communicate with me. So when someone started pushing my buttons, say, when you say it this way, I'm going to be more receptive if you say it this way. And then they go, oh yeah, okay. And then those changes can be made, which means that I'm not getting my buttons pushed every 5 minutes, and it's a better working relationship, both personal and business. But if I'm out at the store, at the convenience store, and somebody says something in the wrong way, obviously I'm not going to waste my time trying to train them on how to talk to me. But I do come across sometimes with people who are very rude behind the counter, because I will just look at them and say, "You just having a bad day, or are you always this charming?" And they typically just look at me like, "Oh my God, I'm being disrespectful." And they typically, "Oh, I'm sorry," and they just kind of catch them into a place where they could be a little bit better human being. So, one of the PDFs that was sent to you was a bad hire worksheet, and I just did up a mock. I'm probably kind of conservative for most times on these things, but if you look at cost of posting a job nowadays, I looked at iHire and it was $300. Cost of recruiting or a headhunter or a staffing agency, that all depends. They range from, a couple $100 to tens of thousands of dollars. It all depends on what level you're recruiting. Cost of staff reviewing resumes, typically on an average hire, it's probably 4 hours. And I'm being conservative at $30 an hour, because we got to remember, when we pay somebody, it's not just the hourly rate, it's also benefits and Social Security and everything else that we have to pay on top of that. So that would be $120. Cost of phone interviews, because typically that's the next step, probably 7 hours, depending on how many people you, which would be another at $30 an hour is $210. Cost of face-to-face interviews. A lot of times that's actually 2 people doing the face-to-face sometimes. It's just an average of $30 an hour. We get another 210, 240 rather. The cost of training someone for 4 weeks. How quickly is your training process? Typically you get somebody in your company, if you're paying them $800 a week for 4 weeks, that's $3,200. The cost of the trainee, the new person coming in, if you're paying them $15 an hour, which is very low for nowadays standard, you get $800 a week, and that's $3,200. I mean, $2,400, $600 a week rather, at $2,400. Uniforms, business cards, cell phones, all the cost of your HR bringing them on board and everything else is average about $900. So a total cost is $7,370 for one bad hire. So if you did that twice for that job in 1 year, we're talking over $14,000. I looked at a municipality actually in New Hampshire, and they were trying to fill a position, and they had 4 bad hires in a year. And I calculated it out. I was trying to get them to start using assessments. That cost the town over $200,000. Okay. And I looked at it and said, "So you won't spend a few $100s with me to make sure we don't keep doing this?" Well, no, that's not in our budget. I'm like, come on, that doesn't make sense. But anyways, but you can see how much that can add up at the end of the day. So this is a sample of the executive summary, one of the pages, and you can see this is a leadership one. And as you can see, where all the check marks are in the D part, I probably don't want that person to be hired as a leader for his management. They have significant areas to work on. Not saying that person wouldn't be a bad employee, but just not in the management position. Matter of fact, this is a one, obviously I crossed out the person's name, but it's nobody in New Hampshire or even on the East Coast. The company was acquisitions, and I was brought in to look at who the players were we had in the field, and this was one of the managers that we had. Obviously, we tried to work with him for a couple months on some coaching. He chose that he wasn't willing to put the effort in, and unfortunately self-eliminated himself. So sometimes that happens, but obviously he wasn't performing to where we needed him to be. Okay. This is a more simplified version, which is more cost-effective for entry-level positions. It basically gives you a concept of their strengths, and it tells you whether they're satisfactory or cautionary hire. And it gives you the 4 things. You're going to show up for work, you're going to work well with your clients, you're going to be conscientious, the 4 major things we really look at every employee. So this is very much a more economic way of doing some assessments for entry-level positions, okay? Okay, so what's your next step? Find a DISC certified practitioner. Make sure that they have some history with it. And I know I have one on this call, but I have sat down with some people that think they know what they're talking about and don't. I'm assuming you do. And I take this very seriously because I am affecting people's lives. And that is not something that should be just taken lightly. My suggestion is taking an assessment that includes DISC, motivators, and values. This gives you a full aspect of you. In order to start really looking at the world in a different way, you need to understand yourself and accept yourself. Because if you're in denial, that's not going to work. One thing I always do is some people don't like their assessment and they'll start a heated discussion about, well, that's not me and this and that. And I will look at them and say, are you married? And they'll say, yeah, I'm married. Well, good. Take that home. Have your husband or wife read that over. If they have any objection to anything that's in there, please have them give me a call. Not once have I gotten a call. That's how accurate these are. I've had others who take the assessment and they look at it and go, oh my God, you looked into my soul. This is me. It's kind of scary. And I said, yeah, it is scary. Practice what you learn. In your company, embrace a culture that uses assessments to better hire, and it will pay off for itself. As you can see, $14,000 on 2 bad hires in the company in 1 year will be a scratch, which DISC assessment will be a scratch in what that cost is. Practice what you learned today. I said that twice because if you don't practice what you learn, then it's really useless information. And the last one is be more successful. I really want everybody to be more successful. I hope you've come across a way with some information that you weren't aware of. If you were aware of it, maybe some things were reminded to you of some things that needed to be looked at. And just to kind of give you an overview of what we offer executive sessions. The executive assessments come in leadership, sales, customer service in general, because all 4 of those need different skill sets that we look at. DISC personal, which is just a standalone, just DISC assessment for personal and business. Then I have a relationships DISC, which is for couples. On the personal side, it's all about personal relationships, what you want out of the relationships, what each other, how to communicate with each other. All the language is about relationship language rather than business. The one that I'm really excited about that I just got access to about 8 months ago is kids DISC. This, I wish I had been given when I was a child. My parents and I might have had a better relationship because as a high D, tell me not to do something and what am I going to do? They would have realized how to talk to me and how not to. This assessment is a gift to a child that will serve them their whole life. There's a page in there for the parents on how to communicate with them, how to keep them safe. There's a page and a half in there for coaches and teachers on how to teach that child and how to motivate them and everything. It's awesome. And then there's like a little coloring book style workbook for the kids to understand what they are. I do leadership training, sales training with the DISC model, and personalized coaching at all levels from top to bottom. So, wrapping this up, if you'd like to schedule some time to talk to me, please don't hesitate to give me a call. You can do it Zoom at any time. My first hour is on me. I'd love to see how I can work with you or give you some, if anything, give you some ideas on getting to the next step. And I hope this was helpful. And my last slide of every presentation is, what'd you take away from it today?
Great job, Armand. I wanted to read off some of the comments in the chat. I'm not sure if you were able to see them while you were.
No, I wasn't able. No.
Joanne mentioned she's an ID and her husband is a CS, and yet they've been able to stay married with a lot of work.
Yes, it's a challenge. I've been married for 40 years to, I'm a DI and my wife's an SC, and she's got a free pass at the pearly gate. So
Allison's couldn't, she had to run for another meeting, but said this was
Yeah.
great. And was wondering if we can get a copy of the slides.
yes, absolutely.
Awesome. I also had a question.
Sure.
I've taken a couple discs I had mentioned at the top of the
Mhm.
presentation. Saw a little bit of a difference in where I went from a D to an ID.
Mhm.
And then I also saw in those assessments about adapted versus natural style.
Mhm.
Maybe talk a little bit about that, because I didn't really know much about it, and maybe what's the
Okay.
largest difference that you've really ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very easy explanation. So your natural style is you, no matter what environment you are. That is you to the core value. Okay. Your adaptive style depends on what social environment you're in, or even who you're with. So if you look at me, who's like an 87 score on a D, which is really high, if someone's D level, if they're in the room with me and we're doing one-on-one, their D level is probably going to adjust to try to meet mine. So it depends on your adaptive style, depends on where you're at and what social style. So if you're out with your friends, your adaptive style is going to be different than if you're in a boardroom or in a business meeting or dealing with a coworker or dealing with your significant other, a husband, wife, whatever, or even your child. Those are things that are adaptive. Okay. Does that explain that to you?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Great job. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Joan.
So Joanne and Erica both said they really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
And we had a really good presentation. Again, thank you, Armand. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Sorry the full screen wasn't working, but we'll make sure we get that straightened out if we do another one. Okay.
Yep. No, I think
right.
we were able to see just enough, just what we needed
Okay.
there. So.
All right. Thank you.